So we're going to dive right in. So, excuse me, I've got my notes here, so I'm going to be reading my questions and asking my questions. So we're going to start with market research has changed a lot over the past decade. From your perspective, what is driving the biggest shifts today?
Well, that's a good question. I think what strikes me is that there is a lot of technical disruption, and the elephant in the room here, of course, is AI coming up. Thinking about how to redo the whole thing and maybe actually remove the whole research part of it. But in reality, when I'm thinking about the whole part of my career, or half a part of my career, what I am very specifically noticed is actually more is expected of data and research. And we have tons and tons of data available to us, especially in the digital world. We have all of the behavioral data, and there is more and more an ask for all of us to make data-driven decisions, but also having a difficulty to get access to research, and especially to get access to human research, voices of the customer, really try to understand the why behind the behavior. And that is very odd. That makes the research industry, I think, in a really relatively difficult place where they need to deliver. They continue still to make magic, to give insight, but also, all of having a difficulty to deliver it to the decision makers.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and I think that again, we are in, and I've been in the industry for a very long time too, coming up, or if not over 30 years now, and have seen everything from, phone research to the rise of panel companies, to the rise of online digital platforms and DIY platforms, and now where we are today. And I would say, and I think that other people would agree with me, that we are in the biggest disruption that I've seen in my lifetime in this. And I think that's one of the reasons why these conversations are so important to have, because you've got, people who are entering the workforce with a completely new set of skills. And I think that those need to be married with people those skills need to be married with the skills of people who have are industry veterans and do understand why things have been done historically. And I think that we see it's obvious why automating aspects of what we do is needed, important, sometimes better, appropriate as an adjunct in other cases. But I think that it's really important that we keep in mind that there does need to be thoughtfulness interjected into any kind of automation, whether it is automating workflows or automating persona development or automating reporting. It should be, you should still very much be in the driver's seat, but you should be, interjecting at the right times, the same way you would if you were working with a human being who you were, helping bring through the ranks. So I do think it's a really interesting time. But again, that's why I think these conversations are so important, because we need to really consider the impact of what we're doing on the work that we're doing and the way that it helps us make meaningful decisions moving forward. So with so much focus on speed and automation, how do you keep research human while still being efficient? I mean, we just touched on that a little bit, but dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, no, I think, and I one thing that strikes me is that speed and automation are about the how you do research. It's about, the process.
Yeah.
But we need to remember that the entire process is a human one. It starts with human. It starts with problems that we need to frame in terms of what are the objectives, what do we want to learn, what are the hypotheses that we have, and then it also ends with human, because what we are looking at now, especially in market research, as FMCG or med health and all of this, it's about influencing people to interact with the brands, to purchase a specific item, to interact with us, and or have a sense of belonging to a brand. So it starts with human, it ends with human, and so in between, yes, we can have speed and automation, but it's all only as part of the process to really kind of make something meaningful at the end. And so I think it's really important for me that we do not keep, we do not lose sight of the why. Why research first, the objective, what are the decisions that we want to look at, and then the why from the respondent perspective as well. Why are they here? What is there for them? To be able to have something that is meaningful from end to end.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, when we first chatted, we talked a little bit about that, about the motivations that people would have to participate in research. And I feel very strongly that the motivations are the same for any interaction that you're having. So you're either there because you're being paid to be there. You are there because you are looking to be entertained, or you're looking to be educated, right? And so if, in an ideal situation, we're ticking all three of those boxes, but we should bare minimum be ticking at least two of them. And if we're not, we're really kind of in a pickle when it comes to getting the humans to engage with us to start, the process that goes all the way through to understanding their purchase decisions and having a meaningful impact on their lives in some way. We always talk about how market research is ultimately there. Obviously it's there for our clients, but it's there to make products and messaging better and more accessible, and for everyone that is engaging with those products. And I think that we need to realize that in many cases starts with us. So I think one of the things that I've noticed recently over the course of the past couple years is that, we've been talking about decreasing budgets and shrinking timelines across the board. And I think that always seems to impact brand side researchers first. And then that kind of flows down, to the agencies that they're working with, and then flows down to, the vendors that they're working with. And I think that a lot of the places we are in are kind of driven by that. So, if you're putting your brand side researcher hat on, what do you think that brand side researchers, brand managers, marketing managers, or even brand innovators are missing with those continued shrinking timelines and budget? What are they losing?
Yeah, it goes back to a little bit of the entire problem of marketing efficiency and the differences between ROI and brand versus performance as well. In terms of that, brand side or inside researcher have a problem because they need actually in reality to justify their own budget against other. So think a little bit about, a big marketing team from, any type of corporate. They need to really kind of justify the value compared to using directly the budget, with paid media, for example, or another IT investment or all of things like that. And they struggle with that in reality. Why? Because research takes time, because we can't attribute everything to anything, because we need also to learn and to build the layers of understanding from that. So one of the things to tackle that first is to be very clear on the purpose and to be very clear on the research objective. Be clear in the type of research that we do. The second thing, I think, for me, and it is part of what I did myself, was to be clear, to have the end user in the room when we were defining research. And
love that.
Yeah, I mean that, not only the in-brand researcher, but also the decision maker. And maybe even, be as bold as having them design a little bit of the research, just to be sure that we have the right question. And I know sometimes this leads to some tension because it's not always the most perfect or the most, how it has been done in the last 30 years discussion.
Sure.
But it brings a dynamism and some speed. And the last thing as well is that I think it's an ecosystem. So we need to work all here in partnership. Agencies, in-house researchers themselves, and decision maker, because at the end of the day, what we try is to build knowledge, is to build understanding of the human behavior, and working together to achieve that, and moving forward with that in mind.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that sometimes too, when you do end up in a place where you have some more unorthodox, should I say, methodology, those often end up being, if you're thinking about it, in the totality of the ecosystem, they often end up being the more interesting experiences for the research participants too. And, I know as an industry, we like our rules and we need them, right? We need some rules for sure. But I think sometimes thinking a little bit out of the box, and designing it with, if you think about the two most important people in the room are the brand decision maker and the person on the receiving end of the research exercise, right? So those are really the two most important people. So everything should be designed with that in mind. So moving on to a little bit of a different topic. So data quality and trust.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about it these days, as they should be, right? And there's been a lot of great work that's been done by many people in the industry. I'd like to, give a shout out to Insights Association. They've been doing some great work along with, the MRS and all of the global governing organizations. So I think it's really important, and I love the steam that it's picked up and kept, which is good. So, data quality is the issue everyone talks about, but few solve well. So that, two questions. So I'd say, one, why do you think that is, which I'm adding in there, and then what does data mean to you in practice?
Yeah, what good data means to me. I start with this, and then I go back to why research of thinking. I think, and I was at an event last week, Big Data London, and it was interesting because data quality was it was a nice event, very nice event, and it was interesting because data quality was there in a slightly different angle though, and that was quite interesting for me because that's where I saw, okay, data quality is not only about being sure that the answer is the right one, it's also about the consistency of the data. The cleanliness of the data, how much is that? It's about the being sure that we have, I don't know, even just a naming convention that I was saying in all of this. And okay, cool, that was a good bit of that. So what is good data for me? It's actually data that I can trust. And I think, the word trust here is very important. And the trust is about, when I'm talking about online survey here, and I'm focusing more on quantitative answer from online survey, it's data that I can trust coming from a real human. And for this, there is a lot of if that can go to that. And to coming back to what we discussed earlier, I think that we will only have trustworthy data if we manage and design a trustworthy experience for the respondent first.
Yes.
So if we ask for 30-minute LOI grid questionnaire like we were in the decades ago, we will not have good data because we are not respecting the respondents in reality. And by forcing them and by actually removing all of the complete that are not good when we do that, we kind of actually teach everybody in the ecosystem, including bots, to give us the data that we expect, and that's not good as well. Yeah, so that's where we need to, for me, go back really kind of a little bit on the basic, respect the respondent. That's mean having good quality design, and then adding all of this, check and understanding and I think fraud detection model to push the ecosystem at bed, because we know we have bad actors in the system, and it has been, in a way, probably the industry have let it go for too long and it's a problem now that we have to tackle, that we could have maybe avoided in doing it in the first place.
I agree with you, because I think that we always, not always, but I would say we most often aim to tackle the problem from a technical perspective, right? Or trying to fix it with technology. But the reality is they're one step ahead of us. And if they're not one step ahead of us today, they'll be one step ahead of us, tomorrow, tomorrow. So I really do think that changing the way that we ask the questions, even the format, right? So building in more video responses, building in more, which is more engaging for the participant too, right? To give them the opportunity to answer a variety of style of questions instead of just repetitive attribute lists or, scale boxes and things like this. But you also touched on something that I wanted to kind of tie back to what we're talking about with the skills gap, right? So when I was coming up in the industry, and I worked in quant for a long time with Burke Market Research, and my first job in actually sitting with data was getting those piles of data tables and actually proofing them against the screener, so like making sure that all the data matched. And then from there, because you kind of started at that place, you learned how to make a tab plan, and you've learned how to make, then you learn how to write a screener, and then you learn how, or a questionnaire. And it's all based on like the knowledge that you just learned, from literally just sitting there checking the things. And I do think that kind of skill is getting lost, because look, and again, this is a place where automation completely makes sense, but you need the people who are using the automation to understand what it is that is supposed to be happening. So so if you think about things like the way a questionnaire is written and how that translates to how the data is exported, and if from one wave to the next the column headers have become different or whatever. So, so I completely agree with you, but I think that is a big part of like the fundamental research design, not that it can't be improved upon from the perspective of making it more participant centric, but like the understanding of why it has to be a certain way in order to be processed properly.
And I do think that here we can be a bit positively and techno addict here, because I do think that actually AI can help us here.
For sure.
Because while before, it was it relies on a researcher explaining why it was that and passing the information on someone, and then when this researcher was changing company or all of this, it was lost, and it was coming back to it. Now we can actually build a more automated way to do that, but also to retain both the knowledge and the outcome if we train it in the right way, and if we take the time to train, and if we don't cut corners in terms of commoditize that for the cheapest possible way. And so I'm slightly optimistic that this can be, especially in survey design, we can do really much better than we had in the last, I would say, decade to make this something very good. But there is also one thing that, one area where I really do feel that it will be, it could be shiny and bright ahead of us. It's in the onboarding experience. And so think about what could be actually the onboarding of a panelist. Instead of having to go through tons of screeners or tons of profilers, you just start a conversational, AI or even video saying, tell me a little bit more about yourself, like what just asked me to do when I was introducing to this call. And then from that, have this conversation with a video and an AI that then check the consistency, understand what the people can do, check with others, and make this a very much a better experience for the respondent that it would have ever been. And I think that also drive quality a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that feeds right into the next question, which is participant verification is a growing concern. Which approaches or tools actually work to ensure authenticity, and where do they fall short? So like, before I give you that question to answer fully, if we have the technology to ask surveys through video, right? Yeah. The back ends of those things can code those or capture them in whatever we needed to, even if it was surveys, right? So like we have the technical ability to do that now. And there really isn't any better way to verify a participant than seeing their face. Now, does that take away all the problems, right? So like if I say that I snowboard and you see my face, but I don't actually snowboard, which I don't, that's not going to catch that, but it is going to catch whether I am a human being or not. You know, I mean, we did a quick survey a few years ago, and we noticed that, and it was all video based because we were experimenting, and we had the responses coming through. And firstly, all the responses it was supposed to be people in the United States, so in the continent, like North America, right? And so all the responses started coming through at like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you could see that it was daylight out, right? So unless there was some massive technical issue where nothing, loaded at the right time, which wasn't going to be possible, even that got you, an understanding of like, hey, this isn't coming from the right place, but it's certainly going to catch bots. So I think that relying more heavily on video is a very nice place to start.
No, I agree with you, and I do think, done properly and in the holistic view, it can also improve quite a lot the respondent experience, because it would really be something like, okay, instead of saying you're joining one panel and it will be, something very transactional, it might be, you're part of this community of interest about something that you like. Is it snowboarding, or is it, a brand that you like? You are ready to give your opinion, so tell us a little bit about ourselves. And yes, do it on video. We don't keep it, it's not like we need to make the balance to still make it right, but by presenting yourself to the community, then you can be welcomed, and we can understand better who you are to then send a survey that are interesting for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's 100% correct. And I think, we have our own panel, and we talk about it. We refer to it as a community. We engage with it as a community. And there is always those fine lines, and I remember being guilty of this early in my career too, where we needed more complete. So I just started blasting, the database, and we've definitely had folks on our team do that too. And you're just like, no, don't send them a bunch of stuff that's like not relevant to them. You're burning through like everything. So, I mean, again, I think, but that goes with just, the lessons, but I a lot of what I think we're talking about too is just really, if you took a step back, it's common sense, right? Put the opportunities in front of people that are going the most interesting to them, and where they feel like they have the most to share, and the most, because we know that's an intrinsic motivation for them to participate in research. Like, we know that. And I do think that, if you think about, you're filling out a form and it's long, if someone gives you a packet of paper you have to fill out, you think about how long you put that off, or how long it feels like it takes, versus, you have a conversation with a person, and given that AI is getting so much more conversational, you can really, the time goes by so much faster when you are enjoying yourself.
No, and it can, you can feel more valued as well in a conversation like this, compared to the relatively dreadful experience of ticking boxes and saying, describing yourself in boxes is really bad from a perspective. And it's much better if it is in conversation, if it is, you're a great person, I want to know everything about you, instead of saying, okay, which level of income,
Right. Yeah, and it's always the worst when you go hit next on a survey and you realize that you missed one, and then you have to go back in to make sure that all your answers weren't like that, you hadn't skipped a line, so and it's funny because even as an industry, we see those things go out for state of the industry things, right? And, and it's I participate in all of those, but you often find yourself halfway through going, oh my God, like with the repetitiveness of the questions, and I get it, right? I understand that, that these things have to work in a certain way in order to be able to be measured against each other, but just like, surely there is a better way to do this at some point, Okay, so moving on to the section that we talked about partnerships and ecosystems. So in real life, insights live at the intersection of three groups. So we've got end users of research, marketing or product, in-house research, and then external providers. And again, you've covered a lot of this in your career. So how do these groups work best together when the objective is clear and people are aligned? What does like that perfect collaboration look like?
Wow. Does it happen?
Oh. Yeah.
No. I think, I think it was, yeah, no, it's, I think first, I think it works best for me when everybody's in the room, like,
Yes.
and not having, just being clear and being very clear about where we are, and then having a shared objective. I had the impression as well, it works better when the agency where and I where in a way it's a bit surprising. They come with the expertise from the human side, but it's worked better if they are curious about the business side as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And if actually, and I'm thinking of that, I remember some of our best interaction, especially when I was at eBay, was when we had a genuine interest, not only for the business models or why and how we will use the research, but even for the business model in itself and how it will be used, and then a genuine curiosity for the customer that were at the heart of this business model, and that's I think I would encourage everyone in the research industry to be curious about the business side of things, even up to the decision process in each company, which is slightly different, in each company, the dynamics between in-house and end user, the discussion about how the budgets are made of this, because this is helpful, really helpful for the long-term partnership.
Yeah, it pops into my head when you say that there's two things actually that pop into my head, and one is, especially having worked agency side for most of my career, that I was always surprised by how silos were, both within all the agencies that I worked in. So you had, quant departments, qual departments, they often shared clients, but they didn't share findings. Yeah. And then again, within companies, and I get why a massive company is going to have, different sections and verticals, but even within that, there should be, a holistic viewpoint of whatever, line of business that you are representing, and that should be rolling up into sort of the overarching, brand ideals and the brand, equity and personality and so on and so forth. And then the second thing I was thinking of was, prior to COVID, white space sessions were always such a fun and engaging way for an agency to learn about a brand, where you get key stakeholders that are across the brand working together, with the agency to help them understand exactly what it is that you're talking about. So, not just the goals, but, the internal structure and why some things can happen and can't happen and so on and so forth. And I'm wondering, and I don't know if you have an answer to this or not, but like, since COVID, has those kinds of sessions picked back up, or are people still doing that kind of stuff, or?
So I can answer for what I've seen. And so in the company I've been, there was, and I was actually part of this a lot of push for, customer closeness in general. And that can improve, actually, that can include agency. And I think sometimes actually the beneficiary of those programs were not only the employees, they were also the contractors working for them.
Sure.
And I will always advocate for this type of program, by the way. I think that the more as a company you understand why someone is interested about your brand, of course, the best, your work will be better. It will be better for you as an employee to understand why you work here, but it also about how to really serve this purpose and this brand from that. And that was, and we thought a lot about this, who are our customers, which customers should be in the room when we talked about, the customer seat, the well-known thing that at Amazon, there is a seat for the customer in every meeting room and all of this, and bringing that together, that could help for that. But I think it's also interesting in this field because it's really about thinking about the user. I don't like user I prefer consumer, but the user of a brand, the people that like a brand as a community. And as a community, it holds rule, and it's sometimes escape completely what the brand wants to do as well. And depending on the size, it can have its work on node. But this community exists, whether you would like it or not, and it's important to interact. And that's also where I think, and that's part of some of the challenge of the research industry, is that it's also this community exists on social media. It exists outside of the channel that research used, and sometimes it's not there when you do a focus group because the brand doesn't want to be there, and then the community doesn't say.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, because the community self-create at this point too, because they've got the platforms and the leverage to do it. So so briefs can drift toward validation. And I always like this question a lot as a person that has facilitated and sat in a lot of focus group rooms, right? So, often a brand will come with ideas that they have, and they'll hear all kinds of things, but they hear out of, 100 different people, they hear the one thing that validates that the one person is looking for. They check a box and out the door we go. So briefs can drift towards validation of what a team already believes. So what are the early signs that a brief is heading there, and how do you reframe it towards learning and decisions?
No, that's a very good question. And I do think it's the biggest challenge for an in-house researcher is to be constantly being called only to validate or to and then the ROI is very bad. So here I have two different things to say. First is that if the decision is already made, and if I know that there is no room for maneuver, I just politely decline the research. It's a waste of time and money to just validate. Now it's difficult, and your question was better, better worded than that. Is that what are the early signs? And it's not. So it's about how much is already decided. That's the first thing. But then what I prefer to do is actually to reframe the question to the why. Why do you need it? Why do you need validation? What is the thing? I remember, for example, in a research project I was on, which was about a name, and in reality, we wanted to validate if the name was okay, because the legal side of things means that we had very, very little choice of what it meant. Okay, we still did a bit of research, but it was not mind blowing in terms of what we learned. Because, that. But I think that's why the type of the search and what you can do here. And going back to the search, I will also say that it's actually sometimes easier to change that from the exterior, being an agency or being a provider, than it is from inside. And so if you see that's coming, incoming, it's actually could be in a way, then that the in-house researcher and the agency could partner to try to influence the brief towards something that is more interesting and more collaborative than just a validation.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what popped into my head when you said that is, so with the rise of AI and the ability to even generate your own personas, with the most basic AI out there, right? And AI has been accused of being very sycophantic, right? So if you think about the historically, the reason to have an agency brought in was not just for their their ability to execute the research, but to be objective, right? So if we are an industry cutting out agencies because there are tools that allow us to do this ourselves, we do kind of run the risk of just getting in our own echo chambers.
Echo chamber, and we can even create the synthetic data to validate the echo chamber. But now I'm a marketer, by heart. I do think that at some point this will show somewhere. Your campaign will not be successful. Your brand will disappear. I don't know. Something will
hopefully wake you up.
Wake you up. But because the reality is somewhere. But I think I think the most important is to be very remember that research is a scientific endeavor. It's science. So we need to keep the scientific mindset, like Adam Grant is putting it together. It is about hypothesis. It is about experiment. It is about testing the hypothesis, and being wrong sometimes. And it's not. It should not be considered the end of the world if the names that legal has told us, none of them are working, because it's we have made progress if we have learned that none of them are working. And I think the reality now, I think, and that's where I will be more positive about this, is that I do think that end user of research understand that. They also are being asked to be data-driven or data-informed, or looking on fact and based. And so that's where we need to work together to understand that and move forward on this basis.
Yep. Yeah. So the next question, it gives me a little bit of a chuckle. So in regards to this particular topic, so I used to work for Holland Partners, which at the time focused primarily on advertising research, and we would often get hired by brands to work in conjunction with advertising agencies, and the advertising agencies would often refer to market researchers as the killer of ideas, right? So there was tension in the room always, and so what governance or ways of working keep everyone honest and on track? For example, role clarity, decision gates, and documentation that ties insights into actions.
Yeah. Well, brief being discussed and approved, by everybody, including KPIs that we will be looking at. I know it's a bit weird because sometimes we don't have KPIs as one of the things that's part of the brief, but especially if we're building that. And I think we need to, there is one thing that, one mantra that was used in a different context, but I think it can help here, Kerry, is the fight is outside. And, when we are in those situations where we have a creative agency coming with an idea, the market research that is here to inform, to help, to try to understand what's going on, and then the end researcher, it's all part of the same team trying to understand, to make the best possible outcome. And there should be, the fight is outside. Because otherwise, we are just speaking of that. And I think we need the reframing to put that impact and, use all of the KPI and the fact-based data that we can have to be on solid ground.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, so now we're heading into my favorite topic, which is the participant experience. And we've touched on this a little bit, but I'm a huge proponent of it, and have been so happy to work on aspects of this with the Insights Association, including the Participant Bill of Rights, which I'd like to give a shout out to. I mean, it's so important. And I think that, again, what we've talked about before, that our if we don't focus more on this, our pools of people are dwindling because we're just not getting enough from the experience with us. So the industry talks a lot about respondent engagement. What is the participant experience like today, and how should it evolve?
Okay. So if I'm thinking about online, panels, like the way that I do and that I know, I think the online experience, the participant experience, is, I would say, rated very poor or poor. Yeah. Why? It's because we kind of put them into the experience and expect that because we are paying a little bit of incentive, we can do anything with that. And that's not true. That's just not true from a very basic part.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the competition, yes, it is about other side hustle or other way to get money online, but I do think the competition is actually against attention. It's for attention.
Yeah, for sure. And with the internet and the way that it is, and and the way that I always think about it too is like, so if you on an individual level, on a personal level, you pay for experiences. So it's not, in fact, it's not just about money coming in. You will put money out the door to go have an enjoyable, not saying that we should be charging to, for them to take surveys, but like the idea that it doesn't have to be about money coming in. If someone is enjoying themselves doing it, they will, So anyway,
no, you're totally right. And I think as a thought experiment, it's actually interesting to put product teams in the room and just say, okay, design an experience where the participant is paying. What will it be? Or design an experience where there is no incentive. What will it be? Because it's forced everyone to think about the participant experience, not as, because we are giving an incentive, we can get away with it. Because it's just, it's a model that has passed its date.
Yes.
And also for one big reason is that if we increase the incentive to get more engagement, we get more fraud.
Yes.
And we get so that's where we really need to have something that actually works better for the experience, for the respondent, for the entire ecosystem, to remove the fraud that day and having work. So now, when we think about it, actually people love to share their opinions.
Yes.
And especially if it is about brands that they interact with. Think about the number of times you go into a coffee shop and you received a feedback survey about it, or even in the airport, feedback once you pass the security. So in reality, I do think that actually people are okay and want to share their opinions and do that, but it needs to be something that is not too tedious for them. There need to be something for them in it, as I love your framing about educating or entertaining or giving back, and it needs also something that respects who they are,
and how they the world. So like if we're still relying on survey methodology that was designed when people were taking surveys on the phones, we're really missing that. People do not interact with the world that way anymore. And so I think that I always think that research, we should be aggressively evolving to match how people exist on a day-to-day basis. And whether it is, in to use your example of the airport, that's a bite-sized research experience that intercepts them in the moment, right? Yeah. Or if we are sharing back how their research has helped them or helped the product or what impact it had, or it's everyone spends a significant portion of their time online and they are engaging with brands, they are providing feedback, but we're pushing them towards the way we want to hear about it, not the way they want to share it. And I don't want to say that naively, because we do need ways to measure things against each other and ways to bucket things, but there has to be more that we can do than we are.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it needs to, for me, it needs to go into two directions. Is in actually branded survey.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Research, because when you say, I'm this brand, I want to interact with my community, everything becomes more interesting, I think, for everybody, including people that are not interacting with this brand. So I know it's not pure, it's not neutral. It needs to be taken into account that you have said something that it's the brand, but I do think that it has definitely a place to go. And the other direction is in complementing the behavioral data. We have absolutely tons and tons and tons of behavioral data.
Yes,
much more than I think we could ever process, and that's why AI is also good and will help us. But if we branch the behavioral data with good quant or good claim data that is used to not validate but to complement the behavioral data, then we are in the right, and we really kind of help with this. I think where we should not go, especially, is producing all of those trackers and those very long survey that in reality try to, and you said it, try to be consistent with the way that we were doing research 30 years ago, because we want to still see the world as it was done before, and which is where we do not respect the participant experience.
Yeah, it's funny because I've always asked the question: would surveys look like they do if your brand was all over it?
Yeah.
And so that's one way of thinking about it. And the other way of thinking about it, to your point about behavioral data. So if we run a new ad campaign, or we run, if we're putting billboards all over the place, or we launch a new product, we have the behavioral data to see what happened. And at this point, we do have enough historical data to be predictive about what is going to happen in the future. If those predictions are not met based on what we've seen in the past after a new campaign was launched, then we know that there's something going on with the campaign. So then we can dig deeper into like a different thing. So we do, to your point, we do have that. And I remember, 10 years ago at this point, probably, when big data was the topic on everyone's mind, and what are we going to do with it, and how is it going to impact us, and everything else. Well, we should go back to that conversation about, are we leveraging it the right way in order to make the interactions that we have around that data insightful, useful, engaging, and all of the other things. So have you seen examples where improving participant experience directly led to better insights or faster decisions?
So I thought about this question because you were kind enough to provide me the answer, and I think it's not that easy to answer. And I would keep 2 or 3 examples. Getting to faster insight, definitely, definitely, because I've seen poor design survey that took a lot of time just to get the complete, and clearly it was because it was poorly designed, and screeners as well, and a lot of qualification of this. But that's a little bit the obvious. Then if thinking and putting this aside, where is really the better experience? Does it lead to better insight for the end result? Well, there is a question. For me, it's more like the ecosystem. If you harvest too much of your I don't know, tree or fruit tree, if you don't let anything back into the tree, you will probably not have wood for the next week. Sure. And it's a little bit what happened, I think, with this engagement. And I see it because I see it, in the difficulty to get recruitment over year, and the fact of having to recruit for more and more sources, and in a more and more different way, to get and being able to answer. And you were talking about you used the example of burning panelists earlier in the discussion, and this is exactly what happened with what can happen in without revising this, because again, people try, they will try on different online panels, 1, 2, 3 times maybe, but then they will give up, and that's, I think, the most crucial challenge, because once they have tried and they're lost, they would not come back.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, and we've talked about this a little bit over the years. But if you go online and you do a search for reviews of survey companies, not any company in particular, because what ends up happening is you've got content creators and influencers who are reviewing the totality of the experience of taking surveys, and it's you don't find good ones, and I think that should be like actively upsets me that is the representation. And and you've got the people that are content creators are obviously in many ways the ideal participant. They're articulate, they are interested, they're engaged, they have a broad audience. They could be advocating for our industry instead of saying avoid.
It's but and sometimes the feedback or the pushback I had from even people, directly, or colleagues, was that it needs to be more neutral. You can't recruit for people that wants to talk about their brand or wants to talk about their opinions, because that will not be, a representative, or that will not, be neutral. Sure. And I also got this pushback when we was doing, community of customers with brand research, and it's totally valid. It needs to be, you need to take the insight or the result from those community into a different way than if it was completely, the general pop. But it's still interesting, and you get better insight because you get deeper insight.
Well, we recruit like out in the wild most of the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of those people, I think, are not in databases. And so, but you then therefore have to sell the experience to them, right? And so if you sell the experience to them, you get them in the door, and then they get halfway through a screener or halfway through a survey and they quit. That's not helpful either, right? And so we talk a lot about, especially with asynchronous exercises. I think they sometimes fall into the same category of surveys. So like one that always pops into mind is we were doing a journaling exercise over the course of like 2 weeks where people were chronicling the food and beverage intake. And every single, so firstly, they were supposed to do this 8 times a day. They were supposed to do this around every time the journaling started every time they thought about eating or drinking something. And it was an exercise of like, so how were you feeling? What were you, what emotional things were going on? What physical things were going on? What were your options? And it was like, it was like 10 questions that just don't even make sense to like how you're actually, thinking about what you're eating and drinking. And so I went back to the researcher because I was concerned that what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, look, how much time do you think this is going to take for a person? And, and she quoted me the amount of time that I think it took her to write the battery of questions and then copy and paste it 100 times to make the guide. And then I said, well, do you think that, people are like actually processing information this way? And I was like, I'm not trying to be difficult and argumentative, although
I am a bit.
sure it's coming across that way, but it's like, I'm just really concerned that you're going to, spend this money and do things and you're going to get really high drop off. You're going to get people that are answering the questions at the end of the day. You're going to get, all of the things that you don't want about this, versus designing it kind of in a better way or tying it into like a fitness tracker or, like for people that are already in, recruiting in a way for people who are already journaling the things they do. Anyway, I digress, but like it just seems like to design research like that, you have to think about, would a regular human being off the street do that for $100 for 2 weeks at all, let alone for $100? And the answer, and I think a lot of cases is no. And, if you sit down and you take a step back and you've looked at your research and you think, would you do this? Not would you get paid to write it, but would you sit down and actually do this on a daily basis? And you can't honestly answer. And if you feel like you're not objective enough, then put it in front of, a friend or a partner and just say, would you do this? Or try it for a day and see how it goes, So, yeah.
How did it end? How did it end in this case? Did they change it? Yeah.
No, they didn't. And it went exactly as you thought it would. I mean, and we deal with that with screeners a lot, where so that was past the screener, the point of, but we deal with that a lot even in research design, where they're asking them to download an app that's not available in App Store. The first thing that happens when they try to download it, they get an alert that says, this is not approved and may cause problems on your phone. And you're like, these are the kinds of things that you should flush out before we have agreed with the client that this is what we're going to do, So, but if you can't find, what I always end up saying to the client, and I think this bears true across qualitative and quantitative, is that if you don't rethink this, you'll end up with nothing but liars and weirdos. And in the case of quant, liars, weirdos, and bots.
Totally. No, or bots, or it's especially I think in the food and drink environment. We know from research on nutrition mission how it is difficult actually to make those decisions and how frequent they are. So putting this into and asking this into a claim data survey, it's very, very, very tough.
Yes. Okay, so last section that we're going to talk about today is looking forward. And some of this stuff we have talked about a little bit already, but I think it's worth kind of, instead of looking at it in sort of a where we are or retrospectively, like where we're going. So what role should AI and automation play in ensuring both data quality and participant and experience? And where should humans stay firmly in the loop?
Humans need to stay firmly in the loop in a lot of different places. I'm thinking of AI really as an accelerator, as something, as a layer, like a hardware, software, AI, to do more human things quicker, bigger, with more data, but it remains a human thing. at the end, which is why I think synthetic data has its play, but it will still need a lot of culturing, yes, of work from human researcher to make this work. So that's definitely one thing. I think I like the way that AI can really change the conversation with the respondent, because instead of having online ticks, it could be conversation. It could be fun as well, because we know, actually when we use our favorite bots, we can make them fun and we can enjoy the experience. We can then make them educational, as you said, supportive, and we can put that into the discussion that we are for our research. So I think in a way they could change completely, the AI could change completely the boundary between quant and qual, and bringing the good experience of qual, which we know, qual is totally different experience from a respondent perspective, into something that is, that has the reach and the volume of quant. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that I really want to excited about is the behavioral data analysis that AI can do, and then matching it with good discussion about the why. And here I would just, finish by saying how important the stories are. And we know it's important. Storytelling is important when we, put back our results towards end users. It's important as well in terms of what do we learn, what do we put together. And I do think that actually here AI can help us a lot by helping us to understand the patterns, bring that up, and then for us to then have much and richer a view, and coming, in a call session, for example, with, a very interesting point and perspective to ask about why this behavior, why have you developed in this funnel part of the funnel? What was the intent behind going into this place? Why? And that's what I'm, expecting and looking forward to see.
Yeah, there was a woman she was quite clever, and her name was Betty Andemo, and she had built a survey company that ended up was almost like a video game, and it was really interesting because you could fit a traditional survey into the model, and it would be but instead of asking how likely are you, it would have you almost like a choose your own adventure where you could, and I just thought that always that was, it was not terribly expensive. And I think that, maybe hopefully what we'll see with the rise of kind of low code, no code solutions is more interesting ways to present surveys, whether that is through avatars or for people to, be able to just get entertained like we were talking about. So, so for you, paint your ideal research stack. How do two-way rich conversations in group settings combine with like heavy processing? So what we were just talking about, but how do you imagine all that working together?
Well, I think, maybe I start by taking an example. Thinking, you design a new product, innovative product. You want to know, what's, if what you have is something that will be interesting for your prospective customer. And I think what I would love to be able to do here is to really kind of have the behavioral data, which might be, A/B testing, or it might be impressions, or it might be even clicks, really kind of basic marketing data from that, analyzed, and then being able to then go to a focus group or an hybrid of conversation, quote, and have discussions about, okay, so we understood that you looked at our webpage and you stop at this point because you have maybe eye tracking when you're doing this, and then you decided not to shop or not to purchase. Why? What would have changed you? And then they can bring that discussion. So that's in a kind of new product. And then I think it's even better when you think about an established brand or your customer, or discussions about retention and churn, which is something I've worked, earlier in my career about how to retain more customer, how to avoid churn, and these are pivotal moments, in terms of, you had a customer and then they leave. So why is the reason for that? And I think those type of hybrid of behavioral data plus a rich two-way conversation can help that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think again that that's smart. And it's really the, those things not necessarily always in the same order, right? Depending upon what the research goal is or
Yeah.
the information that you already have on hand.
Mm.
And so lastly, and I really liked what you had said before about making sure everyone understands like the actual business goals and the KPIs. So I think this fits really well in with that. But how do you measure success across stakeholders? For example, end users, in-house researchers, and providers, so that the work is judged on outcomes and not just outputs.
Okay, well, that's whole long So one of the things I fairly believe is that clarity of goals is actually kindness. You know, it's what is important for all of us to move forward, and to be the best human colleagues, workers, and friends possible. So. And then in a kind of a research, it's important because there is the output, like I want more GMV if I am in a marketplace. I want more impression. I want more conversion. I want more. And yes, we're working into that. Then the research probably would have something that is a little bit kind of more circled in terms of what do you want to learn and what do you want that the decisions brings to you. So it might be conversion is a good one. Usually, you can fact base. It could be also satisfaction, pre-post satisfaction or NPS questions at the right place. Could be I think for me, it's important actually to have a participant experience that is positive, because I think that also brings that then the quality of the insight and bring that. And then there is also the KPIs from the end user of research. Do they feel at the end of the research that they know more than at the beginning? Have they learned something that they didn't know? Did it bring them more ideas to continue their learning? It's the idea of continuous learning. We continuously learn about our customers or our consumers and people that interact with us. And so it's to bring that. It's a bit more difficult to measure in terms of ROI, that it's an important possibility to bring them to the entire ecosystem or their own thinking.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And so that concludes our session for today. I want to tell you how much I appreciate your time. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I've been able to watch out your window as well. That
coming dark.
The golden hour has come and gone, and but this conversation was just as enjoyable as our first. I thoroughly appreciate your time and your energy, and I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully soon.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Kerry. Really enjoyed the conversation, and it sparked a lot of ideas in terms of what to look at for next. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a whole page of notes, so there's going to be some follow up. Okay, I'm going to hit quit recording.
Yeah. Cool.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't too much. I mean, I feel like when you're not looking at the clock, and we did go over, so I apologize for that. But when you're not looking at the clock, it's like it's a sign of a good conversation.
Yeah, no, I think it branched into different ways. It was good. It was interesting. I hope that my answers were.
Your answers were phenomenal
and rich, as kind of as much, and would be interesting for your audience. Yeah, totally.
I think that they will be, and I think that the biggest thing is like, whenever you have people, whenever as a qual researcher, and especially a person that started my own company, and I started my own company primarily because I felt like I was not manageable ananymore. And so as a person that is like often ready to throw everything out the window and do things my own way, I always think it's really important to get grounded again in what has to be for companies and what has to be for the bigger agencies. And I think that that's so important. And it's like, we're in such a weird spot with like skill gaps and new tech that people don't know how to use, and people who are afraid of it, and people who will only use it because they've been raised on it now. I mean, so like we're in this like really weird time of just like a perfect storm of things. So I think these conversations are important.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. It's a will,
Yeah.
call or anything like that, because it's and also I do think that's why one of the words that I don't like to hear is speed, because I think speed is killing a lot of what we can do
It
for
has
the
been.
long term.
Yeah,
And
it
it
has
always
been.
has, and I think it
Yeah.
always has been. I think in this
Yeah.
type of things, and I remember I had a conversation, 18 years ago with someone, I will not say from where, and say, well, what are you the most excited about AI in the market research industry? And the answer was, oh, it will be so much quicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and no,
Not
it's
like
not
error
that you
reduction
need.
and keeping us new ways to think about things. And, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, there's been a lot of posts recently about AI slop. And we were talking about this too before, right? So that people are putting things out there as reports that they have written. But, and it's funny because Jay posted or sent me something about this. And I was like, yeah, but listen, the kind of person that is getting AI to generate a report in totality and not reviewing it or asking the right questions or framing it the right way or getting it to even if you use a report AI to help you create something, that should still take you hours.
Right? Totally.
Getting it to the right place, and but it's the same kind of person who would previously have just outsourced the report to India and then never read it, or outsourced the work to an assistant and then not read it, and then it gets to the client or it gets to and you're just like, what is this? Did you even read this? Yeah.